Hello everyone. In today's session, we are going to learn about an important concept in criminal jurisprudence, that is the FIR. The relevant section is section 154 of CRPC. You can also have this section open for a better understanding. Let us see the roadmap for today's session. We are going to see what an FIR is. We'll also see the difference between cognizable and non-cognizable offenses, followed by who can actually lodge an FIR, what are the components of an FIR, what is the procedure to file an FIR, EFIR, landmark case in regard to FIR, and lastly, the remedy a person has if police fails to take action. So let us see the full form of FIR. So that is the first information report. You will see that this term is sort of self-explanatory when we see what it actually means. So it is basically the first report of information that is reaching the police. And that is why it is also known as first information report. Self-explanatory, right? So it is a written document which is curated by the police authorities when they receive information about the commission of a cognizable offense. That is why it is also important to understand the difference between cognizable and non-cognizable offenses, right? So cognizable offenses are basically those which are more serious in nature. So that is why the police can arrest you without any warrant. So for instance, murder, rape, kidnapping, all of these are cognizable offenses. Whereas non-cognizable offenses are those which are less serious in nature, and that is why they cannot arrest you unless they have a warrant. For instance, offenses like cheating, assault, defamation, all of this falls under non-cognizable offenses. Now you will ask, who classifies this, right? How can we know that which offense is cognizable, which is non-cognizable? So the answer is the criminal code, like your CRPC itself, classifies offenses into cognizable and non-cognizable. So the code itself tells us which offense is cognizable in nature, which is non-cognizable, or which is bailable, which is non-bailable, etc. So that is the code you will refer to understand whether the offense is cognizable or non-cognizable. Moving on, let us see who can file an FIR. So there was always a misconception that, if a person has been aggrieved by something, only that person can file an FIR, which is not true. So essentially, an FIR can be lodged by any individual who has information about a cognizable offense taking place. The keyword here is cognizable. So as we studied, cognizable offenses are the ones which are grave in nature, like murder. So if you do have an information about such an offense, you can go and file an FIR. The police and officer in charge has to file an FIR irrespective of the gravity of the crime, as long as it is a cognizable offense. Further, any police officer can lodge an FIR on his or her own if they come to know about the commission of any cognizable offense. So it's not the case that the person has to wait for somebody to come and inform. If a police officer by themselves they get to know about the commission of a cognizable offense, they themselves can lodge an FIR. So the answer is literally anyone can file an FIR as long as it is a cognizable offense. Let us see a sample. So on your right side, this is a sample of a first information report, which is filed under section 154 of CRPC. Some of the important components are date, time, place, the details of the incidents which have occurred, the description of the persons involved. So if you see point 6, there are a lot of details given of the complainant. So if the informant, for instance, there is an offense which has happened and you do go and you file an FIR. So your details, important details such as name, your birth date, your nationality, all of that would also be recorded in the FIR. Other important details as to what is the type of information, as to whether it is oral or whether it is written, or which is the place where this offense has occurred. All of these details are filled in the FIR by the police officer. Let us see the procedure. So it's a very simple procedure. You have to visit the nearest police station wherever the crime has taken place and furnish the information you have pertaining to that offense. Secondly, Section 154 also gives you an option whether you want to give that information orally or in writing. If your information is in the oral form, then the report must be written down by the police officer himself. So at the end of the day, the information is going to be in writing, but you do have the option to give it orally. The report must be read out to the informant. It should be signed by the informant, and a copy of the FIR has to be given as proof. So all of this forms the procedure of how to file an FIR. One of the important things to know over here, as we see point 1, it says you have to visit the nearest police station. For instance, if that does not happen, does that mean your FIR will not be filed? No, it does not mean. So there's an important concept known as zero FIR. So for instance, if you do go to a police station and that is not the nearest police station where the crime has occurred, the police officer still needs to note down your FIR. They still need to note down the information which you are furnishing. It will be termed as zero FIR and it will later be transferred to the relevant police station. But just because it is not the nearest police station, it is not a ground to reject an FIR. That being said, let us see what an electronic FIR is. It's a very simple concept. Basically, your FIR, if you're filing it online, it is known as electronic FIR. So you can visit the website of your concerned state. You can fill in the details as prompted. If you can see the image, it's a screenshot of the information which they prompt you to fill when you go to a website in relation to an FIR. So they ask you a lot of details such as police station name, subject, complaint type, etc. So everything which we saw in the FIR earlier, all of those information, similarly, you have to fill all this when you file an electronic FIR. So all of that will come under this. It's a form with drop down menus and option to fill, and this is how you will basically submit an electronic FIR. Now, this is one of the very important cases when we talk about Section 154. It is the case of Lalita Kumari versus Government of UP and others. The Supreme Court had basically laid down the inherent advantages in relation to the obligation to register FIR. So when we say that, the police officer is obligated, if you remember in the initial slides, we saw that the police officer cannot reject reject the reporting or cannot reject accepting the information furnished by you if it is a cognizable offense, no matter what the gravity is. So this obligation has been put forth, and the advantages are that it is, first of all, the first step to access justice for a victim. Now, whenever a crime has happened, this is going to be the first step which initiates the entire procedure for you to access justice. Only when the FIR is filed, then the investigation and everything will follow, and then the court would be involved in everything. But the initial stage is the first information report. Secondly, it upholds the rule of law. Thirdly, it also facilitates swift investigation. And lastly, it leads to less manipulation in criminal cases, which is a high possibility when you see the ground reality. Therefore, it lessens the incidence of antedated FIRs or the deliberate delay in lodging FIR. Now, lastly, let us see what can you do if your FIR is not registered. It's a possibility, right, that your FIR is not being registered for XYZ reasons. So what you can do is you can directly meet the superintendent of police or the any other official which is concerned and bring your complaint to their notice, or you can send them your complaint in writing through post to the superintendent of police or whatever the officer in charge is. Secondly, you can file a private complaint before the court, which has the requisite jurisdiction. Lastly, this is your last resort. If nothing works out, if the police is doing nothing to enforce the law, or if they act in a biased or corrupt manner, you can always approach the State Human Rights Commission or the National Human Rights Commission and bring this to their notice, and they will help you out in this regard. So these were the steps which you can take in case your FIR is not being registered by the police, given it is about a cognizable offense, right? Okay. That being said, we come to an end of this session, and this was one of the sessions which were requested by one of our viewers. So if you do have similar requests about any topics, you can Put that in the comment section or reach out to us in the given social media handles. Thank you so much.